So welcome. As I said, I'm Mandi Sherlock-Storey. I'm the speaker for today on the session on resilience, leadership tools and team tools as well. Actually, I'm from the Northeastern Yorkshire Leadership Academy, which I'm hoping many of you are familiar with. We've got an hour together, and originally when I was invited to do this session, I was hoping to make it as interactive as possible. And then as the design of the event unfolded, it was apparent that we couldn't actually break breakout rooms into breakout rooms any further. So it just presents us with a slight challenge around how to make it interactive, but it's dependent on you speaking to me, I guess, and using the chat to respond. So I'm going to try and make this session as interactive as possible. It's a little bit challenging because I'm going to have to share my own screen, which means then I can't see anyone or see the chat. So what I'll be doing is coming on and off this screen sharing and engaging in conversation. But I'm sure, you know, we're used to these things now, and we'll make it work as best we can. So let me first of all test to see if I can share my screen, having just landed in the room together with you. This is the thing about, you know, no face-to-face. There's no chance to prepare. You've just got to hit the ground running, haven't you? Okay. Okay, I can't see anyone at all. Oh, I can see one person. I don't know who you are, but it'd be really helpful if somebody could just speak up and say, am I sharing one slide entitled Team Resilience and the Leader Role?
Yes.
Fab, thank you. So we'll carry on with that, then, and I'll talk about what we're going to cover, and then I'll get fairly quickly into a bit of interaction around that. So what I've got planned for our time together, we're going to explore resilience in teams in particular, and Paul's keynote speak at the beginning has really set the tone for, you know, this session, if you like. We're thinking about this notion of the culture of well-being and engagement in organizations and the role of leaders and teams of that. So we're going to take a lens on what you know, moving away from resilience in individuals to what about resilient teams? What do they look like? And drawing our own experience for that. We'll have a consideration of the role of the leader or manager, which again Paul's nicely introduced us to in terms of you know, the role of leaders and managers in creating cultures of well-being, and the benefits that brings for individuals, collectives and organizations. And that might be your own role. I don't know, I'm sorry, who's in the room, but some of you, I'm guessing, are leaders and managers by virtue of the nature of the event. So we're not just considering this in an abstract way. Hopefully it's coming down to, you know, what's our own role in leading and managing people, and creating resilient teams and organizations. And what I'm going to use for the whole session is a model which is called Resilience at Work model. And I'm going to use that to support our exploration and insights around team and leader resilience. And hopefully at the end, leave you with an action or two to think about. The idea is, you know, the theme of the conference is pause and reflect, but the real benefit is pause and reflect is then, you know, we feel there's some breathing space or some motivational time where we can decide what are we going to do next. So my aspiration is that, you know, I'll take it to that point within 55 minutes or so. So this is the raw toolkit which I'm going to share with you. And interestingly, Paul, who was the speaker, I don't know if he's in the room actually, because I couldn't see who the participants were, but Paul is a key consultant for promoting this tool in the UK and a distributor of the toolkit, if you like. But you don't have to actually use the toolkit to benefit from the model. The raw model is a Resilience at Work model, is really a very pragmatic model, but it's also very well evidence-based. And I'll include links at the end if you wanted to follow that up. But the idea bound, you know, we've touched on the idea, if we have high levels of well-being or a real positive culture of well-being in an organization, then there are, you know, multiple benefits. We're looking at the bottom of the screen here. We achieve, you know, that team performance is optimized. There's change adaptation because our bandwidth is wide rather than narrow. and there's engagement and well-being, and which ultimately, you know, the engagement and well-being for individuals and teams in an organisation translates into performance outcomes for the organisation, whatever that is. In the NHS, obviously, it's benefits for patients. In other organisations, there are other measures of productivity, but we get those from this maximised resilience and well-being. So what the model suggests is there are three elements to that. One is that at the top left-hand corner, we have individual resilience. And there are components of that that are considered to be notions that these are things we can work at. Resilience isn't a fixed thing that we arrive with. It's about, you know, behavioural things that we pay attention to behaviourally, things that may shift from time to time. But there are some things that we can do for ourselves that will boost resilience. If we think about it as we hold a set of resources, that are personal resources that we can boost to get our well-being bumped up. So there's individual resilience. I'm probably not going to touch on that a lot today because I think there's a lot of emphasis on the individual resilience throughout the conference. So what I thought to explore a little further is the team resilience and the leader role in that. So what the role model also offers us is this team resilience measure. 7 components of team resilience, which I'm going to explore with you in the context of your own teams. And then there's the role of the leader in that. How does the leader and managers in organisations support and promote team resilience and individual resilience? So let's get to that first point, kind of conversation point. During the past year, what evidence of resilience in teams have you witnessed, and what characterises resilient teams? So just take a moment to think about that. And then I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and maybe hopefully some of you might talk to me. If you want to, then comment in chat. So just think, you know, what evidence of resilience in teams have you witnessed, and what characterises those resilient teams? Okay, so some fabulous resilience to demonstrate by clinical teams as we hit the floor running. Yeah. Ability to have a laugh together, challenges of virtual presenting. Oh, that's a comment to me, sorry. Anyone else? Speak up if you want to come off, you know, come off camera, come onto your camera and just share something, but feel free to add to chat as well. Yeah, so relationships, mutual respect, so important to team resilience. Pulling together when pressures were greatest and coming in day after day and still being able to smile. Yeah, great stuff. Adapting to the ever-changing demands. Support through grief and loss. Yeah, a real challenge. You know, doesn't characterise teams in many organisations, but certainly does in our sector. The increasing demand for that. Okay, I'm going to go back to my slides and continue to add to chat so you can get the examples. But I'm sort of taking it for granted that we've all experienced resilience in teams in the last year. because we function, teams have functioned, we're still standing, organisations are still standing, and that wouldn't happen without individual resilience and the team resilience that's needed. We've seen the best of teams in a variety of settings, in a variety of guises. What characterises the resilient teams is really important. So let's take a bit of a dive into what is that then? What is it that characterises resilient teams? Just going to start sharing again. Okay, I'm presuming I'm sharing a title, Team Resilience. Yes? Someone? Yeah, thank you. So here's a definition from the Resilience at Work team: the capacity of a group of employees to collectively manage the everyday pressure of work and remain healthy, to adapt to change and to be proactive in positioning for future challenges. And when this definition was coined, I guess it was pre-COVID. So, the unanticipated pressures of work and remaining healthy in a pandemic has added something particularly important to team resilience. The team RAW, the RAW 7, identifies 7 areas of team resilience. It ranges from robust, resourceful, perseverance, self-care, capability, connected, and alignment. I'm going to talk briefly through each of these in turn. But while I do that, what I'm suggesting you do is think about your own team. That can be you choose what that is as we go through this exercise. You don't have to share it any wider. It's really just a point of reflection and application. So think about your team and rag rate how your team's been doing. That might be a team that you lead or a team that you're a member of. It's entirely up to you which team you choose. But just to anchor that, when we're talking about the team resilience components, what does that mean? What does it look like as you've experienced the performance of a particular team in the last 6-12 months or so? So how have you been doing? So use red, amber, green, yeah, for how your team's been doing. So let's take the first dimension of these RAW team 7, and that's robust, and that's defined here as having solid intention with agility. And robust teams have shared purpose, meaning, and goals. Are adaptable to change, and they're proactive around issues and future challenges. So, thinking about the operating in a pandemic, a team might have had a very clear sense of purpose that united it before the pandemic, but as they worked together through the last 12 months or so, have they had a purpose that's been meaningful for the team and pulled them together? Has the team been adaptable to change, or have they been phased by it? Has the team risen to the occasion around change? Or has it been flawed and found itself unable to adapt? And how proactive has the team been around issues in the last 12 months? Thinking about how do we respond to future challenge, anticipating what they might be, rather than waiting for them to arise. So just take a moment. How was your team? Red, amber, green, on robust? Okay, I'm moving on to resourceful, which is the next of the 7. So how does the team do in terms of optimizing resources and processes? Optimizing creative use of strengths and resources, and a focus on continuous improvement. So during the last 12 months, how's the team been doing in making use of the strengths of the team and maximizing the resources? In pre-pandemic, we might have been operated in a fairly, I would say, stable state, if ever such a thing existed, but where we're making good use of strengths and resources of the team for a known purpose, a known state of operation. Pandemic came along and maybe threw up in the air all the things that mattered in terms of the strengths and resources that we had. We need to rethink those, reshuffle those, bring others into the fore and put others into background. How did the team do there? Did the team balance strengths and make good use of the resources of the team? And has there been a continuous focus on improvement and doing what matters? Not just good enough, but doing a really good job and optimizing how we do that. So thinking about your team, take a moment. Red, amber, green on resourceful. Okay, let's take the next one. Perseverance, which is one we might traditionally think of. When we think of resilience, it's often the thing that people think of most as a definition that we bounce back or, we persist despite setbacks. So thinking about the team, what does that mean in the face of the challenges over the last 12 months? Has the team been collectively regrouping in the face of obstacles? Connecting around that and thinking about, what are the obstacles that we are faced with? How do we overcome those together? And in particular, having a focus on solutions. Thinking back to, the input that Paul had at the opening session this morning, the importance of having an optimistic and positive and well-being oriented mindset means we are open to solutions. When we are stressed or, leaning towards a state of burnout, then we become very narrow. And that can happen on an individual or a collective level if we think about teams. So has the team kept its bandwidth broad so that it can focus on solutions? So moment of reflection, how's the team been doing in the last 12 months, persisting despite setbacks, regrouping and being a solution-focused team? Red, amber or green? Okay, next one is a culture of self-care. This is about focus on well-being, which if we look at resilience from an individual point of view, there's a very important message. We need to pay attention to our well-being. Step that up to a team level. What does that mean? Well, we need a team that's a container for that and supports that and actually has a culture of being a team of well-being, not just a collective of individuals. And what that means is they're focused on self-care and good stress management routines collectively and aware of that as a team. They're tuned in to signs of overload in the team and responsive to that, and would promote a message around work-life balance. So where's your team been at in the last 12 months around a culture of self-care? Has it been actively promoted? Are they tuning in? Are they supporting and spotting signs of overload? Recognizing that work-life balance, I'm guessing, is a challenging aspiration in the current climate, but as a team or individually, are we striving for that? So red, amber, green for your team. Next, we have capability, which is about having the capacity and capability to deliver in a constantly changing environment. So in order to do that, teams need to build their capacity through networks and resources that seeking going outside of themselves to extend themselves to build their capacity. Seeking and acting on feedback on how we're doing as a team. Are we tuned into our capability by being aware of what our stakeholders, for example, are telling us about how we're doing? And are we looking for and building on what's working, seeking to take an appreciative approach to build our capability and capacity by building a foundation, a solid platform that we go forward with, building on what's working. So how's your team been doing delivering, and developing capability in that changing landscape? So have they been networking, seeking and responding to feedback, seeking to build? Red, amber, green. Okay, and then finally connected, having a sense of belonging. And this is, when I looked at the chat before I came back to screen share, there was a mention of the importance of relationships in the team and how a team pulls together, which is exactly what this aspect's about. Does the team have a sense of belonging, create that sense of belonging collectively by being supportive and cooperative in the work, in getting the work done? And thinking about that the last 12 months, that can be potentially challenging. People have been working under challenging circumstances, in perhaps different circumstances. You know, team may have been divided in the way it's worked because of personal circumstances. Has the team continued to be supportive and cooperative in getting the work done in that challenging period? So where is your team? Red, amber, green? And then finally, we have alignment, which is that having a shared motivation for success. So thinking about the different elements that we've already covered: purpose, relationships, you know, self-care. This is about that real sense of we're in this together and we want to achieve together. So it's a shared desire for team outcomes. As a nature, the nature of the team is teamed rather than individuals, if you like. There's an optimistic view of the team and its capability, and there's a positive tuning in to progress and celebrating success. So how aligned has your team been in the last 12 months? About shared desire, an optimistic view of the team's performance, and that positive focus on progress, celebrating success and building on that. Red, amber, green. Okay, so I said I'd try and make this as interactive as I can. It'll be good to hear from one or two of you if you want to come on and just share your RAG rating. I don't mean share all of your RAG rating, but maybe some insights from that or conclusions. Continue to share that in chat. So you've thought about a team that you're part of, or just focused on a team. When you've applied the RAG rating, what's anything standing out for you? Be nice to hear some voices. If you want to raise your hand. Thank you, Sarah.
Morning.
Hi.
I think the challenge that we've had, I work in CNTW, mental health services, is that obviously, like most people in the pandemic, we kind of have had more of a command and control structure. For good reason, I think. You know, we've all had to experience that over the last 12 months, 15 months, whatever it's been now. And that has changed the dynamic for people in teams and on the front line, because we've all ended up being told to do things that, you know, you wouldn't necessarily have planned yourself. And so I think we're all in a bit of a recovery phase at this point in time, and trying to come back together as teams. As you mentioned a minute ago, some people have been redeployed into other areas, given different tasks to do. Perhaps they haven't had as much say as they would have normally had in how they've had to do their jobs on a daily basis.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting point about that command and control culture, because there would have been a lot of effort before that, the pandemic, going into building non-command and control cultures, and it raises a question about what happens now. And I guess the question, Sarah, is, you know, the team might have experienced being in a command and control culture, but did they still stick together as a team, with some positives coming through for the team itself?
Yeah, I mean, certainly for my guys, and I mean, we happen to be the continuous improvement team, so we hopefully continuously improve. I'd be very disappointed if we don't.
Yeah.
But because I have clinicians in my team, some of them were redeployed back into clinical services to lend a hand, things like that. We have tried to stay connected as a team, so we've tried to kind of informally connect with each other. And now that we're starting to come back together on our normal day jobs, as the world, fingers crossed, quietens down a little bit, then it's difficult though. I think it's you have to put the effort in, don't you, to stay on top of these things at times like this.
Yeah, the team's constantly developing. We see teams might not have been functioning together, coming back together. So you know, it raises the question about, you know, what do we do now, and development efforts that are needed. And this model can help to have conversations if the team's ready. I think it's about not thrusting the team into something it's not ready for. Thanks, Sarah. I'm going to take something back. Laura's got a hand up.
Hi, sorry, I've been whizzing away on the chat there. Sorry, I thought I ought to say something.
Yeah.
So I think it's a little bit in contrast into what Sarah said. I think my experience at the beginning of the pandemic was more that it was kind of a bottom-up thing, and we were kind of it wasn't nice to say. A lot of our seniors went off sick suddenly, so suddenly it was like, where are all the grown-ups? We better just hit the floor running. Yeah. And actually the team on the floor were fabulous. I mean, I'm looking at Rachel here as well. You know, we just, because babies kept arriving, we couldn't pause them just because of the pandemic. So we had to carry on with the day job, try and keep the staff safe and everything. And we were literally writing guidelines by the minute.
Yeah.
But it was a real sense of the whole team pulling together, and everyone, and I was incredibly proud of my colleagues, you know, working on the floor, and all the juniors and everyone who just had to get on with it, but also realised the advantage of having been in the trust for 30 years. So trying to find somewhere to see our gynae patients going down, and finding someone I worked with 20 odd years ago in outpatients. And because you knew that person, it immediately made it so much easier to kind of have those conversations in a crisis situation.
Yeah.
The complete contrast to that was stepping in to help with the vaccination program, and arriving, you know, day one to find myself with people, some I knew, some I didn't, and having to use some of the skills we'd learned from sort of prompt days in obstetrics, and saying, okay, team debrief, who's who, what are your skills, have you done this before, and literally having to form a team on the day to manage this new rollout vaccination thing. So I think there was lots of learning on the floor, but some of it was from the floor up, which I thought was really healthy and showed us what we could do. And I think was quite confidence boosting for people to realise, you know, when left to their own devices, what people are capable of.
Yeah.
So just a couple of reflections.
I think that's great, isn't it? The vaccination process gives us an example of a team that we don't always experience, which is a kind of hit team that's brought together to do something, and they tend to be quite successful because they are, you know, very clearly focused. Everybody has a common purpose, and there's an alignment, and they can be really successful. Quite a different contrast to the other teams you've described yourself, Laura and Sarah, about a team that's suddenly hit with something, you know, hit with something that shakes the foundations of the team, and it's at the organisation it's in. And how the team responds to that. How the team responds to that will partly be a function of how robust the team was before it was hit with that. You know, that's part of the thing. If we're lucky, those teams who weren't quite there will strengthen themselves as they go through the process. You know, this idea of resilience in an individual level, you can't be resilient by having an easy life. You only develop resilience by navigating challenges. So it is with teams, and it's how they respond in flexible, adaptive and positive ways to those challenges, which is in part a function of the culture and climate that they are part of, which is why, you know, when Sarah's talking about the command and control culture, I've got that as a backdrop that maybe mitigates against some of the, you know, the potential positivity within the team. Anyone else want to share anything from that RAG rating that's occurred to them, or an observation? Can't see any more hands up. Please feel free to comment in chat, you know, what's arisen from there, because the idea is to share some things from you know, these provocations, if you like, that are about your own context. Sarah.
Just a very quick final comment from me on the toolkit. I think it's a very interesting exercise, and as you were talking, I was just Googling it to see if I could download a version, because it would be really helpful to have those conversations in team meetings, to kind of just do a bit of a temperature check with the people in the team and just say which bits do we think are working and which bits are not. So I think those kinds of tools are
there is a link at the end on the slide. I don't know if you probably get sent the slides as part of this, where you can look at that, because the idea is there is a toolkit. You can actually, there is a questionnaire, and there's a whole set of guides, and people can get trained to use these. But what I like about this tool is pragmatic. The idea is that, you know, even Paul, who was the speaker this morning, who is the licensee for it in this country, he would still say the model itself is useful, has utility. You don't have to go fully down the route of the tools. That just gives you another thing. But yeah, to have those conversations around that, how we're doing, the RAG rating, you know, is a useful introduction to it. If nobody's got any further observations or comments, I'm just going to press on a little to the role of the leader in that, which is fairly obvious, really. The leader supports those aspects of team resilience. So if we think about a leader who promotes team resilience, they would be the type of leader or manager who builds and optimizes the resources available to the team. They manage the workload and any operational challenges for the team. They link the team to the support and networks as part of that resource part of the team resilience. They anticipate and position the team for change. So they anticipate changes and position the team to respond to that effectively, rather than waiting for change to happen. What that means in a pandemic setting is slightly different, but the idea is, even in that, what we've gone through in the last 12 to 14 months, a leader or manager would have been anticipating what the impact of this is and what may be required to make the team proactive and respond to that. And obviously they ensure sustainability of the team by paying attention to well-being. So if we think about those 7 aspects, what the leader does is support those. Let me just start sharing it again. Okay, hopefully I'm sharing a slide that says, what have you done for me lately? I tend to get a lot of musical references into my slides to see if it starts a tune in somebody's head, and see if that one works for you. So what have you done for me lately? What about leading and managing resilient teams? I said we'd explore leadership of resilient teams, but it might be quite close to us if we are leading and managing teams, which I suspect many of you are. So the question is, what's worked in terms of managing and leading for team resilience? And I'd like to get a bit of a conversation going where you've got we share some examples of that. So just a reminder, what the raw team is about is being robust. It's having shared purpose, meaning and goals, being adaptable to change. Resourceful is about making use of resources and strengths and focusing on priorities. Perseverance is bouncing back in the face of obstacles, persisting despite obstacles. Self-care is having that climate in the team of self-care and promoting good stress management techniques and work-life balance. Capability is accessing networks and seeking feedback, so we're paying attention to, is our capability a fit with what's required of us? Are we connected, cooperative and supportive? Are we aligned to outcomes? And are we optimistic about the team and what it can achieve? What I'd like to do is just have a little bit of maybe 5 minutes to think, what have you done then, or what have you seen that works here? What have you, as leaders or managers, what practices have been in place that build robust, resourceful, persevering, self-caring, capable, connected and aligned teams? Just take a moment to reflect on the definitions there and see if you can come up with 1 or 2 things that you've seen or tried yourself that have worked here. Where as a leader or manager, you're promoting an aspect of team resilience. If you'd like to start sharing examples in chat, I'll continue to share the slide for a moment, but just share examples in chat, and then maybe we can have a little bit of a discussion if people want to expand further on those. I'm going to stop sharing now, so if you just, if you're happy to share some examples. Okay, so I'm just looking at the chat here. Creating a team training plan, send for a lunch break, robust involving team members in the planning, decision-making, action. Yeah, great example. Ownership of new guidance, shared vision, took time out as a team to review purpose and agree shared goals. Really important to kind of recalibrate the team because the goals and purpose may be constantly shifting. Great, so continue putting some examples in chat. Anyone want to speak to me? Please, I'm an extrovert. I need an audience that interacts with me. I can't do this stuff. Anyone want to speak and just share something that they've seen that's worked, that's built an aspect of team resilience? Yeah, difficulties of taking time out. I'm not seeing any hands go up here.
Mandy, hi, it's Martin here.
Hi, Martin. Lovely to hear your voice.
Don't get your hopes up, but I've been multitasking here and just come off another phone call, and I've literally just come back into the conversation to hear you making a very impassioned plea for some feedback, which I'm completely unable to give, not having participated.
Well, what was about was actually I've just talked through some aspects of team resilience that include things such as robustness and whether the team supports itself, has a clear sense of purpose, promotes well-being within the team, and just asking for examples of what managers and leaders do that promote those aspects of team resilience.
I'm not sure it's entirely relevant. One of my experiences of building resilience is actually put people through a really tough shared experience with a common goal, and have that feel both achievable but really challenging. And when they come out of the other side of it, that's a group of people who believe in themselves and the team, and they've drawn strength from the fact that they've been through that experience together. I should
Like a
say
pandemic, you mean? Yeah, I think that does happen. That if people have to, we're talking about, for example, the vaccination teams having to, come together. There was quick hit teams that have to do something with a very clear purpose. But interestingly, yes, that what you just described there could be a team working through the pandemic. But there's something about the aspects of team resilience. Some teams will fragment during that experience, and others will bond. The thing that will differentiate them will be the aspects of resilience that the team had in place beforehand, as well as the culture of the organisation, in particular the leader or manager. Remember, was it Paul said that the leader of a team is important to the well-being as GP, personal well-being, and if you scale that up to the impact on a team as well. Just taking more of the examples from Chatland, building lessons learned, conversations at regular team meetings at the moment on small and large things, encouraging reflection. Reflection is really important. I'm guessing you're hearing that as part of the recovery messages that teams and individuals and organisations, I guess, need time to reflect. But there's a real tension there, isn't there, of taking that reflective space in the pressure of we've got to restart services. We've got to carry on.
Absolutely. From my perspective, and just as I wrote that, I was just thinking we only do them for like 10 minutes in every team meeting, but we just ask people to just take a turn and think about something they've been doing in the last weeks or whatever days, and just think about what went well and what they would do differently.
Yeah.
And it's quite a simple conversation, but it just keeps people's brains ticking over, that we're not just ploughing through work without actually stopping to think about what we're doing and how we're doing it. So I think it's just asking a couple of simple questions like what went well and what would you do differently next time.
Yeah, and the reflective space is really important, and there's something about, I talk about working with a team where it's at and what it's ready to do. I've experienced some resistance for teams who were involved in a team development process and then didn't want to continue at the moment because they said they don't want to essentially reflect on the past and navel gaze. So something about positioning reflective space is it doesn't have to be about we're going to review everything that went on in the last 12 months. It's exactly what you're touching on, Sarah. And what's been mentioned in the chat, it's building on the things that we don't want to lose. That what's the learning, for example, that's an important reflective point. But just taking time to breathe and be as a team is really important. However short that is, or however it's managed. There's something about before we go forward in a big way, we need to pause in a small way or multiple small ways.
I wonder, just can I ask a question of inpatient colleagues who are on the call, because I'm not a clinician, I don't work in inpatients. I wonder, I think there's a comment there about the time needed to do that. I wonder in kind of handovers and things like that, whether, or in any kind of shift handover, whether 5 minutes of like what went well yesterday and what could we do differently, is that routinely built in to those conversations, or is that even too much of a stretch, really? I know it's Laura nodding.
Yeah,
Laura,
well, I'm saying in my view it should be, but whether it always is. And again, often the problem is while you're having the handover, stuff's happening. So, even everyone that's meant to be there but might be dragged off into an emergency that's going on at the same time. So I think it's about having the right number of staff available to be able to practice in this way. And you get to a critical mass where it becomes very difficult, I think, to practice the best, just because the urgent's always overtaking the important. But in a good handover, yes, that should very much be reflection, teaching part of it. But I think sometimes the urgency, I'm very aware that Rachel's more up to date with all of this than I am, but certainly in my practice, the best handovers are ones where you're reflecting and teaching as well, and taking advantage of the quiet times when there are quiet times to sort of do that. And also just any departmental meetings, reflecting back on what went well, because sometimes we just concentrate on what went wrong and we're looking at risk issues rather than saying actually this was something that went really well, what can we learn from this? I think we have to spend time on that as well.
Okay, thanks, Laura. Rachel?
Hi, yeah, just really on the back of what Laura's saying there, I suppose we do try to do that in team meetings in the morning, but what I think we are guilty of sometimes is, for example, I'm going to use resuscitation of a baby as an example. It's something that we are expected to do as part of our job. It's something that we do all of the time, and so it almost becomes normalized. And it's only when somebody, like a friend from outside of work, will say to me, "Oh my goodness, do you resuscitate babies?" And I'll say, "Yeah," and then they'll say, "That's absolutely amazing." And then it's only when somebody actually says that to you that you then think, do you know what? Yeah, it really is, isn't it? And then you want to go back and say to your team, actually, we take all of these things that we do all of the time for granted because it's part of our job role. An obstetric hemorrhage, or ultimately, if you want to go be dramatic about it, if we didn't do what we're trained to do, then we would lose a lady's life. But that's what we're trained to do, so it becomes the norm. And I think what's really important, and I think what probably we have done more during the pandemic, is to step back with those kind of eyes and look on from the outside in a little bit more and say, actually, guys, what we're doing here, because we've got the added pressures of the pandemic, is really truly amazing, and we should really praise each other for what we do a lot more. We're very bad at giving each other the praise and the credit. And just for International Day of the Midwife, in May, we decided that what we would do is it kind of escalated. It started off as a kind of nominate your colleague, or put something nice about your colleague, or say something about somebody that's done something for you. And we ended up with literally hundreds of comments that colleagues made about each other. Just sometimes little things, well, this person does this for me, or this person, or there would be themes that came out, and we absolutely celebrated that. And that's something that people are a little bit uncomfortable about, because we don't like to kind of big ourselves up and kind of, I suppose it's easier to criticize yourself than big yourself up, isn't it? But that was such a positive thing, and it was so fantastic for morale. and is something that I think that we'll probably carry forward, that we learned from, and we'll carry forward. So I think it's just a little bit about forgetting about, I suppose, replacing that feeling of what we do is normal with actually acknowledging what we do. Yes, it is your job role. Yes, you are paid to do it, but it's also something to be very proud of and to be congratulated for doing more regularly than we do. I know that goes for everybody, but obviously I can only talk about my own department.
Thanks, Rachel. There's some great examples there of the resilience promoting reflective space and celebration and recognition. Yeah, thank you. I'm going to share the last slide or two in a moment, but just pointing out there's some of the comments in chat. There's one great one here from Valerie. In her area, 2 acute teams across 2 sites came under the same management, developed cross-site working, used work shadowing and network developments, which helped to harness strengths and break down cultural barriers. And a real quick win was having shared professional development sessions. Early days, but the team are now freely talking. Yeah, so I mean, we're talking about individual teams at the moment, but they're multidisciplinary. There is extra attention needed to build in the resilience of those teams. So some great examples there of the networking, work shadowing, and the multi-professional focus. Thanks for that, Valerie. Okay, so what we're covering there then was thinking about the leader's role or manager's role. If a team's resilience is built up of those components, then we think about what are our behaviours and actions as a leader that promote those things. And you come up with some great examples. Just share my last couple of slides. So thinking about, what do you do for the team that promotes those aspects of resilience, which you do anyway. Leaders and managers do these things, but they may require a particular emphasis during challenging times. I said I wasn't going to cover the individual role because I felt that the time would be better spent on the team and leader aspects of resilience, because the keynote speaker after this session is also looking at individual resilience and boosting your own resilience. But just as a quick reference to it as a component of the role model, again, there are 7 components, which is about living authentically, living with your values, knowing what your values and strengths are. So the question is, can I bring my values and strengths to bear in my workplace? Finding your calling. Does the work that you do, because this is very much about resilience in a work context, just the work that you do enable you to feel connected to some bigger purpose, and facilitate your enacting of your purpose. Maintaining perspective when we're faced with challenges or setbacks. Are we able to somehow get a helpful frame on that and maintain perspective even when things are really challenging? And do we have a range of techniques that enable us to do that? Mastering stress. Do we have good stress management techniques? Are we able to switch off? Do we employ good physical stress management techniques at work, and perhaps boundary drawing or work-life balance stress management techniques, and to enable us to achieve balance? Do we interact cooperatively? Do we feel able to ask for help and feedback from colleagues, and do we also feel able to give that? So that's very important, building our sense of having a support. Staying healthy. Do we prioritize and maintain a focus on our own physical health and well-being? And do we build networks? Do we create a network of support that's available to us, and invest effort in building that network? So some things to think about these are our resources, if you like, and some of them may get out of kilter. We may be pretty good at, for example, maintaining perspective, so we're able to set back and take a good frame on things, but not pay attention to our physical well-being or strengthening our relationships. And the idea is that we balance these so that we're able to draw on them, in particular when we need them. And in terms of the toolkit around this, as I said, it's not essential, but what the actual individual role tool looks at is how you're doing on these 7, and which of these might you need to use as a resource, particularly because it's very strong for you, and which might you need to boost by paying attention to tuning into that, and operating some of the tactics and behaviours that will enable you to strengthen that particular aspect of your resilience. So that just puts the two together, you know, what it is for a team, the robust, resourceful, persevering, self-care, capability, connecting, alignment, and the parallels, if you like, in individual resilience. So what will you try now as a result of some reflections there? Is there any action that you will take to improve either your own or your teams or some aspect of resilience in your organisation? So if you'd like to share what you might try next, or what you're still pondering, even in the chat, so I could get a sense of maybe what's landed from this for you, feel free to speak. Obviously, the invitation's there. Just the last couple of minutes, and then maybe get you a 10-minute break. Okay, so have a conversation about the toolkit in the next team meeting. Great. The Click team are actually looking at the raw toolkit. I think we have had the one or two. There's an accreditation program to get trained to use the actual tools. And I think we've had a couple of people from Click on there who are going to be thinking about how they might use it. But just get in touch if you wanted any more information. I'll give you a just. While you're typing in chat, I'll just get the link for you for. Thanks, Valerie. So trying the idea of shared team values to bring teams together with shared purpose and vision. The thing about values is keep them simple. Don't a lot of the trick is to just keep it simple so people can remember enough and to remember them but own them. It's when they get overly elaborate and complex that the values get lost. Okay, I've just posted a link there. If you wanted to find out more about the model, it's Resilience TV. That's, for some reason, it's come up twice. But if you just search for Resilience TV, you would get access. And the great thing about, as I said, I like this model because it's pragmatic, but it's also very well evidence-based. And it's developed by people who give stuff away. Some people can be very protective about their intellectual property. There's a lot of resources around this model, so you don't need to actually use the toolkit to use it for conversations. Thanks. Continue to put in your chat, things that you might try. But I'm done here. I hadn't anticipated a question and answer session at the end. I'd more focused on keeping it interactive throughout. Hopefully you found it useful, a chance to pause and think about teams, I guess, and resilience. So if you're interested, follow up the Resilience TV.